Welcome back to the Boys and Bolos podcast. We're down here in the barbershop studio. Jarrett, thanks again for joining me on this wonderful day of football. Do you like that?
That was nice.
That was a new little intro. It was like one continuous cadence.
I don't think it's a compound word then. It's just foot and ball. Football.
Football.
Football. Or is it football?
Champions League today. There's actually a Premier League game today. We wrapped up week 31 with a huge Burnley win over Everton. How do you feel about Everton's chances of staying in the Premier League this season?
Let me preface my comments about Everton by going right over to the Boys and Bolos Instagram, which you should follow, daily content in the stories. And Sean Dyche, during his interview post-match, during his presser, said, I mean, he's the only reason why I like Burnley in the Prem is because I like Sean Dyche in the Prem, because I just think he's an absolute joker. And I'm looking it up right now because I don't want to misquote him. So he said, quote, I said at halftime, I'm not sure Everton know how to win a game, lads. That's how I feel about Everton. I literally don't know if they can win a game. They, in their last 11 games, let me find this stat I just saw. I think in their last 11 games, they've lost 9. So Frank Lampard, they can't even let him go at this point because it's just so close to the end, and I don't know what bringing in a caretaker manager is going to do for the last 9 games. So they somehow need to get over the edge. Now, when this game was 2-2, I look at the math, I look at the table, and that's okay. There's still a game ahead of Everett. They still have, a full 3 points ahead of Burnley, and they'll be on the same amount of games. And that's a lot in the bottom, having 3 points ahead of someone. That's an entire full game when there's only 9 games left. But then when they lose, I think the goal was scored in like the 85th minute or something, Everton fans got to know it's getting really dark really quick, because now Burnley's in 18th, Everton's in 17th. Burnley and Everton are now only separated by 1 point, and Everton has now given up more goals than Everton. They have a -20, while Burnley has -17. So that was my roundabout way of saying I would say their chances of staying up right now are 50-50. And they may even been lower. They may be lower. Actually, what we should do is we should look at the games they have left on their schedule.
This is in a roundabout way to get to my point, which is their schedule. Their schedule is horrid for them. It is not easy. None of those games they're going to win, I don't think. I just don't see them winning any of those games. Just any of them.
Oh, my God.
Just read them off.
Okay.
Read them off. Tough schedule.
We'll cover this when we do the matches later, but week 32, United. Then they have to play a makeup from week 18, which is against Leicester. Then they have to play Liverpool, crosstown rivals. That's an L. Leicester's probably an L. United's an L. Then they play Chelsea, L. Then they play Leicester again, match 36, probably an L. Then they play Watford. If they lose the Watford game, they're relegated, probably, just by the way it will come
mathematically.
out. Yeah, it's just between those teams, it's over. Then they play Brentford, probably losing. We'll get into what Brentford did to Chelsea this week. Then they play Crystal Palace, who is ascending, probably one of the most consistent teams, I think, over the last 9 games. Then they play Arsenal on the last day. So out of those 9 games, out of a total of 27 points, they maybe take 5. And I think that's generous.
That's generous.
That's generous.
That means, I was saying they're going to get 2 draws, 2 points.
So you're saying 2 points?
Out of those. I think they can draw Leicester once, and I think they may draw Watford.
Let's look at Burnley, and let's look at their last game. So you're saying, and I honestly, I think that's probably accurate, 2 points. I'm saying max 5, and I think 5 is like Christmas coming to them multiple times. Burnley plays Norwich, that's a huge game if they can get those points, because Norwich is relegated. There's no way they're not relegated. They play West Ham, that's an L. They play Southampton, tough game. They play Wolves, that's an L. They play Watford. So Burnley they're playing against Norwich and Watford, the 2 teams that are with them in relegation, so that's helpful. Then they play Aston Villa, L. Tottenham, L. Aston Villa again, because they had to do a match day. They're match day 18 again. And then Newcastle on the last day. And by then, I don't even think it will matter. But maybe it will. Honestly, actually, for Burnley, it will matter. However, I think Everton, like you said, could do so poorly that maybe it won't matter. Maybe the last day actually won't matter, and we'll know who's relegated.
What struck me about this matchup between Burnley and Everton, it seems like Burnley understands the gravity of the situation, that they need to like really go out and win games and like scrap. And it just doesn't seem like Everton, the players care. It doesn't seem like anybody is grasping what's actually happening. What's with the like monumental situation is they've never been relegated. They've always been in the top flight. They've never been relegated. This team, this history,
they've been in the top
fan
flight
base,
the longest.
Yeah, they should never get relegated. They should never be relegated. It's just so poor the way that they've done business at this club with managers in and out, players, bad signings, bad contracts, crazy things. Like none of these players want to be at Everton. None of them. Not one.
So I think that they've had some bad administration has surely gone on. They let Rafa Benitez hang around too long and just fester. And Copa 90 put up something today, and I put it in the Bolos Instagram stories. So once again, follow us if you listen to the pod. It said, "How are Everton in a relegation battle? How has it come to this?" And it's like 10 different slides, but it shows from last year, December 26, 2020, they were second after having played 15 games. This is the season where we jokingly say that they won the Premier League September Cup or whatever because they won all 4 games. Then it goes into the amount of money, the colossal amount of money that they've spent. And it says, after many years following a frugal approach, Everton have pushed the boat out in recent times, losing a colossal £373 million over the last 3 years. Their deficit has been well over $100 million in each of those seasons. And it goes on to say, all the signs point to Everton going down, really. The club has been circling the drain since the end of Martinez. Players on mad wages that underperform and don't care, clueless owner, a mental transfer strategy. If it's not this season, it'll be the next or the one after that. And what's the last one? There it says, this was a tweet. It said, there you go, and it shows all the stats. Everton have the most injuries, absences, and highest incidents per 1,000 minutes played. So they've also had a crazy amount of injuries. And I met a guy, I think I told you the other day in the park, and he had an Everton jacket on, and he's from Liverpool, and we talked at length, and he's just like, DCL maybe, but he's been injured so much. And if you look at the game today, it was the most, I guess we call it Spursy, but this will be Everton-y thing. They only had 2 goals, and they were Richarlison PKs. I mean, That is, you are scraping the bottom of the barrel. So this team, I think with the fixture list, and I'm sorry I took so long to get there to let you make your actual valid point, with their fixture list coming up, I just think that Burnley take more points than they do. And Watford actually may take more points than they do. So Everton, sitting here now going on to week 32, we know we only have, a certain amount of games left. Some teams, even though a lot of teams are still on 29 games because of makeup games because of COVID, Everton right now, I don't think if you had to bet money, they finish 19th. They may finish 19th. Do you think that's crazy?
They're plus 200 to get relegated. I would say anybody go make a $100 bet on Everton getting relegated because you're going to make some money right now. Or do it. Go do it.
I got to find someone to bet through. I got to find a bookie. I'll put $500 down. I looking at those stats and where they are.
It's insane.
Those bookies are wrong. Those bookies are going to lose money. They need to change those numbers quick.
Well, I think it's going to change after today, honestly. Tomorrow's numbers are going to come out and they're going to be like negative 100.
Exactly. Because dropping those points to Burnley, and then you just look at the fixture list, it's bad. And I think, who was I? I was talking with Ziabko in the DMs, and he said, what did he say? He said, it was 7 losses in 11 games for Frank. That was the thing I put up. And he said it's not his fault. Like Rooney said, damage has been done by Rafa, and Frank is trying to instill a new mentality. We've had 3 red cards in 3 consecutive games. Look at West Ham. Everton was a far better team, yet they lost. Red card to our center back, who's got 2 left feet. So on top of injuries we have, we now have 2 players missing due to red cards. Shake my head. I think it's been like the perfect storm for Everton, because normally like a team will have injuries. A team will have a changing of the guard of coaches. A team will have red card trouble. A team will have financial trouble. They have all of those put together. It's bad. So like that tweet said.
But that's why teams get relegated. That's
exactly
the
why
exact reason why teams get relegated.
When the back,
I mean, it's
yeah.
I mean, what? How else do teams? They don't manage their finances. They don't sign the right players. They don't have players that want to play, and they get injured. And then the good players are out injured. You lose games. You get relegated. That's the Premier League. That's any league in the English tiered system, right? I mean, there's just because their name is Everton doesn't mean they're like safe from being relegated. We gotta burst that bubble.
I think that bubble's been burst.
We joked about it with Arsenal, right, last year. I mean, the beginning of this year or whatever, but we didn't actually think. And I think there's a lot of people who probably still feel have that same sentiment towards Everton, just because of their history and just because they've been around so long. But nobody's going to give them 3 points in those last 8 games. Nobody's going to say, "Oh, Everton, yeah, you beat us, so you can stay up." They're going to be taking scalps because top 4 Europe spots are going to come down to goal differential this year, and everybody's going to try to smash Everton for goals, just like Spurs did. And if you don't, then you're foolish because you know how much goals are worth in the Premier League.
They're worth millions.
And their defense is a sieve. Jordan Pickford's not that good.
So we assume that Norwich is gone because they're just too buried.
Yeah.
But Burnley or Watford, I think, could actually slip out over Everton as Everton dives. Watford's last games are Leeds. Leeds is pretty low. They won't get relegated because they're sludge, but they could take some points. Brentford's also pretty low, but I don't think they win that game. Manchester City, they don't win that game. Burnley, Watford could maybe win that game. Crystal Palace, I don't think so. They play Everton. Then they play Leicester and Chelsea at the end. So I actually think Watford could also potentially take more points from the last couple games than Everton. So I think Everton, if I can make a bet that Everton finishes 19th, it may still be plus 300 or plus 200 even with the result today. I don't know how many, I don't know what the bookies do. I don't know how statistically they get into it. I mean, I'm sure that they actually do have some algorithms that run, who will win, who will take the points, if it's home or away, injuries and all this stuff. But it is very dark. And I actually do think Everton fans are wildly aware of what may happen.
I think Everton fans are. I don't think Everton players in the organization is as worried about it. It doesn't seem that way. It doesn't seem like panic has set in yet. Maybe, but there's a lot of people talking about how this team just doesn't seem to have it. They don't seem interested. They don't seem like they want to play. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their contracts are like if they get relegated, if they can go to Premier League teams, but some of these players are quality who would still do well in the Premier League side, so maybe they're just like, well, I'm still going to play in the Premier League next year, probably. So not all of them will, but
it's crazy. From this past week, I don't know what game that we should talk about. Most things were fairly straightforward. I think United dropping points was honestly just par for the course now. But
they should have lost that game.
Yeah, we should probably just talk about Chelsea. Chelsea in the last 2 games have now given up, as you pointed out today in the group chat, 7 goals. And Chelsea has always done well when we have a good goalie. I know that sounds like, oh, that's obvious, but we have always been a team that defends well, but Peter Cech stood on his head for years and won us FA Cups, the Champions League, the league, etc. Right? Like Peter Cech in 2012 saved a PK in overtime against Bayern Munich. Right? Like we have always just gotten by this. Like Mendy last year had the best season a goalie's ever had, maybe even better than Peter Cech for one year. So if our goalies aren't playing well, it's very, very obvious. And I think that first header from Karim Benzema, I was surprised that Mendy didn't get a hand on it. That second one that went back across the goal, I was surprised he didn't challenge it better. He looked not like Mendy-esque. And then that third one, he just ate it. He just totally was out of his depth and just ate it. Yeah, and just wasn't focused. Honestly, that's a concentration issue because he can do that. He can make a 5-yard pass with pace or whatever it was. So that was talking about the Champions League. But talking about Brentford, the Brentford thing is interesting because Brentford's done, for me, the double on us. I know we beat them the first time, but once again, going back to Edouard Mendy stood on his head in that game. Brentford should have beat us that game. Lukaku had a goal. And then we packed it in, and literally go look at those goals if you don't remember that, but Brentford should have beat us. And then they finally beat us this time at the Bridge. So we trade points, we split, we each, Brentford beat us at home and we beat them at home, we being Chelsea. But I think we got over 180 minutes. I think we got beaten bad. And I don't understand necessarily why. Sometimes teams just don't match up well against one another, and I think that's the case, and they just have our number. But it was tough to see today because I don't think the scoreline in the Champions League, and I know maybe we just start talking about Champions League now if you want, and then we'll get into the next week. But I don't feel the scoreline was actually as indicative. Lukaku misses a fucking sitter. I don't know if you saw that, but he was 6 yards out from the goal. He doesn't even put it on frame. He puts that on frame. I think he scores. It's soaking wet out. Courtois is obviously a top 5 goalkeeper in the world, but if he heads it properly down in the corner, I don't think Courtois gets to it. That's my take. He scores that. It's 2-2. Mendy has a flub. I think the scoreline was a little rough. I don't know if Chelsea can go through. If we had the old goal rule, I would say no. But because we're now just doing full aggregate, no away goals, I actually think Chelsea has a chance to go through. I'd say it's about 5 to 10%. But playing away at the Bernabeu is super rough. And you mentioned this last time, and I think it was a really good point. When we played them last year, we played at the Real Madrid training ground, and we didn't play them at the Bernabeu, which is a completely different environment. So Chelsea, looking at the next game away, they have a lot of work to do. And you said it also in the chat, and I couldn't agree more. It's great, and we'll get into week 32, but it's great that Chelsea has a little bit of downtime and we play Southampton. Not saying that we won't flub that and mess that up, and they won't take advantage of us in between European fixtures, but Chelsea's in a moment right now that's I'm wondering, the question I have for you is, how much do you think the outside the line stuff is affecting the players? Because since this Abramovich shit broke, if you look at their performances, they've been bad. Either they've lost or they've won when they should have lost. So part of me is nothing happens in a vacuum, right?
So on the face of it, they're never going to say it's impacting them. They're never going to come out. Tuchel's never going to come out and say this sucks. I hate all this crap going on with the team, and I'd rather just be able to focus on football. But obviously, we can't ignore that the Ukraine thing is happening, and our owner supports Putin. I mean, there's probably a lot of players on that team who are conflicted, right? Who don't really love the fact that they're playing for a team where the owner supports basically a guy who commits genocide. But I mean, maybe they can in their minds separate football and do it for the fans and really play for English fans as opposed to play for their owner. Because I don't think any of them are in love with Abramovich. You know what I mean? They're probably friendly with him, but they're really playing for the fans. And that's what I'd hope from those players, the professionals. And I honestly, I think that Chelsea. First of all, I think switching to a back four in today's game was a poor decision by Tuchel, and he went more attacking when he took out Christensen, and he put in he put in
Kovacic, and he moved
Kovacic,
up, and then he took out if you look at his subs. Let me just go over the subs so you can reference them here. But at halftime, he takes out Christensen, who the announcer was saying was having a bad game. I thought it was fine.
It was fine.
He put in Kovacic, and then he takes out N'Golo Kante and puts in Ziyech, which is easily the weirdest thing of all time, because over the 2 legs last year and the final, Kante in the semifinals against Real Madrid last year and the final, N'Golo Kante was the best player.
Match.
So I'm assuming he has a knock. Other than that, I think it's absolutely asinine, because I still think Hakim Ziyech is not a Champions League level player. Maybe he was for Ajax, but not anymore. The guy's just a step behind. Then he took off Jorginho, third in Ballon d'Or, and put in Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I don't know if he was doing mushrooms today or what was going on. And then he took off Pulisic and put in Lukaku. So the subs that came in today, the second I saw Ziyech and then Loftus-Cheek and Lukaku come in, it was over. For me, it was over. I knew we can't chase the game with those guys. Ruben Loftus-Cheek today looked like he was an academy kid who just got thrown out there. If you just watched from the time he goes on, it's about 25 minutes, and just watch it again, he was dispossessed probably 5 to 10 times. And being in the midfield, you can't do that.
So I look at Chelsea in the next 5-6 weeks. No, next 5-6 games, which isn't over the course of 5 weeks because they have FA Cup, they have another Champions League game, they got Premier League game, they got another Premier League game, and there's going to be squad rotation, and there was squad rotation at Brentford because of the Champions League game and because of international break. Probably why Pulisic didn't play against Brentford. Probably why you saw Loftus-Cheek today. Probably why you're seeing players come on at halftime, because maybe Tuchel's like, well, we're going to lose this game. Maybe we'll only be down 1 goal or we'll tie it, but we got a Premier League game this weekend that we need to take 3 points. Because the other thing I want to bring up is you've got Spurs and Arsenal charging at third. They're not. I mean, Tottenham have their pedal to the metal, and they're. I'm not saying they're the best team in the league right now, but they're scoring goals. And Kane and Son and Kulusevski and Betancourt look fantastic, and they have a game, and Arsenal have a game in hand, and we're talking about 5 points, maybe 4 points separating third and fourth. So Chelsea, I don't care what goal differential says. Chelsea needs to win their games, needs to win Premier League games if they want Champions League football next year. And so there's got to be some talk of that. I mean, I posted on the Boys and Bolos Twitter this week that there needs to be some talk about third place in the Premier League, not just fourth, not just the race for fourth, the race for third, because it's going to come down to a few points separating third and fourth and fifth, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree.
It could come down to goal differential.
I could agree with you more. I see all this stuff that it's like the fourth place is just between the North London derby and all that shit, but it's not. Chelsea, because they have to fight on all these fronts that Arsenal don't, and honestly, we're struggling to score goals. It's going to come down. I think third, fourth, and fifth are just like 2 years ago, are all going to be decided on that last day. I don't see another way. The only thing I will say for Chelsea is we have incredible amounts of goal differential. We have 20 more than you and 25 more than Arsenal. But that's why it's so important these final games when Chelsea plays Tottenham and Chelsea plays Arsenal and Arsenal plays Tottenham. And all those are really important. So you get the head-to-head. I'm actually not sure. I think it goes to goal differential first. I'm not 100% sure.
Chelsea doesn't play Tottenham.
Oh, then we just play Arsenal?
Just Arsenal. We already played Chelsea like 5 times this season.
That's literally true between the FA, the Carling, and whatever it was, whatever Papa John's Cup.
In the 2 games.
Okay, well, our Arsenal game is huge. It's also huge for my bet with John Scheimer. Mathematically, John wins by week 34. All things happening as they should in the world. But Tierney is now out for Arsenal for the rest of the season, and that's a blow.
Knee injury.
Partey is out. The Arsenal injury.
Tomiyasu's out.
Yeah, but I will say I watched the Arsenal watch the last 15 minutes when they were already down 3-0. Arsenal kept pressing. They just couldn't get him behind. And if I will say one thing, right now I do not see a way that Odegaard is not in my team of the season. He was so impressive in the midfield, coming out, breaking out the ball, and just connecting and trying to connect. He just doesn't have maybe the talisman you need up front. But if Arsenal in this offseason can kind of pick up somebody who can put the ball in the back of the net, with that guy behind him, he's very impressive. I mean, I was super impressed by Smith Rowe. He's basically keeping him on the bench. And there was just 5 minutes of play where I was just so impressed. He seemed to be heads above everyone else on the team on both sides of the field.
This was a game, though, that Martinelli sat and Smith Rowe got the start with Odegaard, and obviously that didn't work. And so I wonder if that's actually not their best, not their best midfield pairing or forward attacking pairing with those guys out there, because they play a 4-4. What do they play? I don't even know what they play.
That they would play a 4-1-2-3. But I honestly have not watched enough Arsenal games to tell you, and I think that
they play it. They play with one number 9 Lacazette up top, and then they play with a bunch of midfielders, kind of like a City
4-5-1 situation.
Yeah, kind of like a City type of thing going on.
A false Lacazette.
Which they needed another striker, but that's another whole other conversation.
Get into week 32? Actually, no. Can we wrap up the Champions League and just talk about that super quick? So I think Chelsea's chance in the second leg are slim. 5%, maybe. I would say 5% to take it to overtime, and then I don't know if we have the legs and we're going to be away. So, if Chelsea were to get out of this, it would be incredible, and people should be worried about Chelsea if they can figure out this quagmire, because Real look ridiculous in Benzema. as I think, what's his name? Rio Ferdinand said, his half of his name should already be on the Ballon d'Or for this year. I mean, he's unreal right now. Like, he's the cat. That's literally his name, El Gato. Like, which, in Spanish means like, just put him in the box and he'll figure it out. And that's what he's been doing. So Manchester City will go through. Atletico Madrid literally had their 5-5-0, which was, it was hard to like even think about. Liverpool seemed to go through. They only scored, Benfica only scored a goal at home when Liverpool messed up. So I think City and Liverpool go through. Chelsea, we've talked about. What do you think about the Villarreal Bayern? I kind of left you the juicy game to talk about.
I mean, Villarreal were at home, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that helped. I think Unai Emery, something about him in these cup tournament style games, he does well. He gets his team playing. Parejo, I think, played well, and even Lo Celso played pretty well. It's amazing. Lo Celso can boss the Bayern midfield, but he can't. He can barely make it in the Tottenham side. You gotta wonder there. His mentality or him staying fit. I think the big part of it is he's been fit. But yeah, I mean, Villarreal. Like you said, Bayern's never really impressed. Lewandowski is definitely not the best striker in the world. I don't care what anybody says. He doesn't show up in these big games. He can score against a bunch of farmers, but when it comes down to it, in the big games, he doesn't score. He's just not. Was he there today? I don't know. I didn't see him. I didn't see him do much.
He's. I feel like he's 50-50 in the big games because he scores for Poland and helps them get in the World Cup, but then in the World Cup from 2014 for Poland, he didn't really do anything in the group stage at all. And then with Bayern, when Bayern was in the final, he wasn't the one to score the goal. Once Bayern get in knockouts, he doesn't really score goals. He does obviously rack up a shit ton of goals in the Bundesliga. And I don't want to speak poorly about the Bundesliga because I do actually think it's I think it's very high quality football relatively. But I'm hoping that he comes out and, has a better game because the guy's class, but hopefully he can prove that because I said it in the group chat today. I'm just never really that impressed or scared of Bayern, and I think that's because in 2012 we went in there with the depleted team and beat them at the Allianz, and I think forever I'll always just not be scared of them. But Bayern, I think, are still favorites to win the UCL though, which is interesting.
The thing is the Bayern can throw up a stinker. They lost in some German Cup game 5-0. That was their last time they didn't score in a game, and they could easily go on and win 7-0 the next game, right?
Yeah,
they're one of those teams. It's whatever.
It's like saying Beetlejuice 3 times. If you talk shit, now that we've talked shit about Bayern, they'll probably win 4-0, and John Scheimer he's got the text ready. He's Bayern blood till he dies. I
know, and I'm not. I mean, they hit on paper, that Bayern team is much better than Villarreal, right? But there's something that Villarreal team has between Foyth and Lo Celso and Parejo, and yeah, I mean, they find ways to make it happen, and yeah, I mean, some ex Spurs guys on that team, a couple of them.
There's Coquelin is on that team too. He played for Arsenal for quite some time, and it's interesting because now he couldn't get any run at Arsenal. Just I don't think Lo Celso maybe could get a lot of run. And anyways, so it looks like in the next round you're going to have Liverpool. Well, you'll have Real Madrid likely versus City. I think that's on one side. And then on the other side, Liverpool will probably play Bayern. I think Bayern at home will win more than 1-0. But football has a way of surprising us all. And this Villarreal team has shown that it is ready for tournaments. Unai Emery apparently can figure it out with Villarreal because he couldn't figure it out with PSG, which – I mean, that's a quagmire within itself. But week 32 is upon us. Let's look at that. Friday, we have Newcastle at Wolves. This is at St. James. I still think Wolves win this 1-0.
Yes, agree. No,
okay, next
2-0.
game.
Newcastle were dog shit last weekend, and they can't defend. As soon as they get behind, I don't think they know how to come back.
Wolves are brutal too. Wolves are playing strong.
They're a good team.
The next game is on Saturday. Early first game is Everton, Manchester United. I don't even need to look where it's at. United want to come back from dropping points against Leicester. So I've got 2-0 United.
Yeah.
Wow, this is easy. Next game, Arsenal, Brighton. This game is going to be at the Emirates. Arsenal's coming off a loss. I think Arsenal win this game, probably 2-0.
Depleted Arsenal somewhat. I say 1-1.
Okay. A tie would, that helps Chelsea and Tottenham and allows other people to get closer into Europe. So the next game is Southampton versus Chelsea, and we will be traveling to St. Mary's, which is not always the easiest place to play. I think we win this game. I don't want to even give a scoreline. I think it's going to be a dog shit game. It's going to be. I don't even know if I'll watch it because I just don't. I think it's one of those games where we're not actually supposed to win, but we actually win.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a James Ward-Prowse take the lead on a free kick type of beat Mendy deal because Mendy's maybe a little bit down. But you find a way to tie it before half and then come back and win in the second half, 2-1.
That sounds fair. Next game is Watford Leeds. This is a big game for both teams because they're both kind of down towards the bottom. So what do you think of this one?
This is at Ellen Road?
Let me check that. It is at Vicarage.
Yeah, I don't know. Leeds have had some time to recover in the international break. I don't think a lot of their players went out. Not a lot of their players went out on international break. That which will help them. Maybe Bamford's back. Rafinha's good. I think Rafinha went out. I'm gonna say Leeds is gonna get the win.
Okay.
2-1.
That's going to be a big win for them away and a bad loss for Watford as they try to get out of the relegation. The next game is Aston Villa Tottenham. Your boys against Aston Villa, and this is at Villa Park. What's your score prediction here?
Not feeling great about Villa Park. I also hate playing Villa because they seem to I don't know. Spurs are still better. Spurs are still a better team on paper. I think they're finally moving in the right direction with Conte, and I'm going to go 3-0 win.
Wow, at Villa Park. Okay, if you guys win this 3-0 and Chelsea drop any points with Southampton, the third place is totally okay. Before I say that, the third place for me is already totally up for grabs because I think Chelsea's going to be stretched too thin going in the stretch. But this would totally affirm what you're saying. If you were to win big and also Chelsea tie or drop any points at St. Mary's. So I'm not even going to say anything against that because if Harry Kane's in form, he's class. So
Harry Kane is literally the best player in the Premier League. And that's not even hyperbole. He's the best player in the Premier League. 100%. Watch that guy ping passes around. He can score goals and he can distribute the ball. He's like he's a 9.5 right now. He plays like he could play as a 10, but also can finish the ball better than anybody else.
I think so in order to figure out who's the best player in the Prem, one of the easier ways would be to look at market cap and how much they would go for on the open market. So we can, not just be like my opinion versus your opinion. I don't know if he's the most expensive player in the Prem. And I only say that because I think that there are younger players like Foden who may go for more.
Nope. Look at the market cap. He's 120. There's the only one, Salah, maybe.
I was going to say Salah. Maybe Mane doesn't even get up there. Not anymore. I'm running through my head. Kevin De Bruyne, because he's a midfielder, maybe cracks 100. Maybe. But then I don't know because Grealish goes for 100, and that dude hasn't really done much this season other than he just signed a Gucci sponsorship. So I don't really have – I think you're right. He may actually be the most expensive player, one-off. If Real came knocking at the Prem, he may be the best. The next game is Brentford versus West Ham. This is going to be at Brentford. So for Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham fans, we need Brentford to win. After what Brentford did at Stamford Bridge, I think they can win this game. I think it's actually going to be the game of the week because I think West Ham's obviously a fairly good team as well. So I'm going to go 2-2.
I'm gonna go 3-2. I think 3-2. Brentford get the win.
That'd be cool. The next game is Leicester versus.
You got to remember also one more point about that. West Ham play a Europa League game this week, and so they do not have any much depth. I don't know which game is more important for them. I would assume the Europa League.
Exactly. Also, I think the Europa League is more important to them. Also, building on that Harry Kane point, I saw that West Ham won 150 for Declan Rice. And I forget the comment. It was like, how are you going to ask 150 when the dude doesn't score goals? Like, goals are what you buy. You buy goals. No one's buying someone who has a lot of tackles, So, anyways, there's that.
He's a defensive midfielder.
That's what I'm saying.
He's an 80 million, 60 to 80 million dollar midfielder all day. He gets a little bit more. He might get a little bit more because of the English homegrown tax. That's it. I
thought that was asinine. So anyway,
there are a lot of the bottom line is there are a lot of players in La Liga and Serie A who can do what Declan Rice does just as well. And we see, and who's a prime example of that? Betancourt. He was riding the pine at Juventus, and he came in and he's bossing at defensive midfield.
He's looked really nice.
There's a lot of players in other leagues that can do just what Declan Rice is doing, who do not cost 150 million. I'm not saying that Declan Rice isn't good. I'm saying he's a very good player. He's not a $150 million player. No way.
That's just West Ham saying we're not going to sell him, but I thought that number was so asinine. The next game is Leicester versus Crystal Palace. This is going to be at the King Power. So Crystal Palace is coming off a win. Leicester's coming off a tie. I would like Leicester to win this, and these teams are also right next to each other in the table. I think Leicester win this, but it's going to be between the Brentford West Ham and this Leicester Crystal Palace, and then obviously the last game of the week, which is going to be for the title. We'll get there. Those two games for me are potential game of the weeks. I think Leicester win this, but it's going to be very, very tight, and I don't even know if Crystal Palace outplay them.
I mean, yeah, Leicester seem to be on a somewhat upward trajectory. And they get to play. They have a couple of easy games towards the end where they play. Everton a couple times, I think, or Watford, or yeah. So they play
Everton twice. They play Everton twice in the last 9.
Yeah, so I see them salvaging, a top 10 finish out of the season, and I think this is kind of the start to that. And probably a draw is an appropriate prediction for this game.
Actually, you know what? All the games, and I agree with you, first of all the games on Sunday are going to be good. Brentford, West Ham, I think is going to be a good game. Leicester, Crystal Palace, another good game if you want to watch. These are good games for the neutrals. The next game, Norwich, Burnley, is really about, is Burnley trying to escape? Are they going to continue the momentum because they just beat Everton? Because if they let Norwich take any points, they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot, and they're making it difficult for them to do the escape, which I believe is possible looking at Everton's final matches. So this game, Norwich-Burnley, will be played at Carrow Road. That's not going to be easy for Burnley because Norwich have got to know, hey, we're relegated, but let's go be spoilers. Let's go see if we can get points. What are you thinking on this one?
Today they should have won. They should have won 3-0. Those penalties were dumb. They were soft penalties. They shouldn't have given them up. The bottom line is the first one especially, nothing was going to happen from that penalty. It's Everton. They suck. Let them try to dribble it to the touchline. Honestly, that's what they were going to do. They were just going to try to push it to the touchline, and you clipped them. Enough of that. Just as long as Burnley plays somewhat conservatively, they have more going forward. They have more midfield presence. They can defend better. They have a better goalie. Just don't shoot yourself in the foot and give away stupid soft shit around the box. That's it.
I think Burnley win this. I think and I want them to win this also to keep the relegation battle kind of spicy. So let's go Burnley wins that. I'm not sure. Yep. The last game of this week is really the one that I don't care what you're doing on Sunday. You need to find a TV. All right. You need to figure out a way to watch this game if you're into the Premier League, because this is really the entire season. So you have Manchester City and Liverpool on 30 points, on 30 games played each. Even though this is week 32, makeups, COVID, etc., other things being canceled. Man City's 1 point ahead. They have 73 and Liverpool has 72. This game is going to be played at the Etihad. What are you thinking? Who's going to win this one?
I think it comes down. It doesn't come down to what Liverpool puts out there, because I think Liverpool, you kind of know what you're going to get, because they can interchange their strikers pretty well, and you're still going to get a pretty potent attack. I think Salah, Mane, Jota, Salah, Mane, Diaz. So,
you always say Suarez.
I always say Suarez.
I don't know.
Luis.
Two different guys. One bites and is Uruguayan, one's is Colombian and not going to the World Cup.
Yeah, and so whatever top three you put out there, you're going to get a top three. What is City going to do? That's my question. What is City going to put out there? Because I thought today, was it today or yesterday? Yesterday's game, they should have started Foden, right? What is going on? Like the 5-5-0. Like, can we just? What is happening? Like No, Grealish never starts a game. Is it just an embarrassment of riches? Is it just Pep's trying to mix it up and rotate? What is happening? Because De Bruyne had a great goal yesterday, and I think he's class. And I think when you put him in he finds the ball in the box and the open shot, he's gonna score. And obviously he's one of the best midfielders in the world, but they're still lacking a number 9, right? And so they're still lacking a guy up top who can score. Is Mahrez hurt? Mahrez didn't play yesterday, or I don't know. But the bottom line is I don't know what the lineup's going to be, so I don't know how to predict this. I honestly think it's going to be a really close game. I don't think that City's going to blow out Liverpool by any means, and I don't think that Liverpool is going to suddenly score 5 goals against City. I think it's going to be like 2, maybe 1-1.5, and then Liverpool maybe scores late and they win 2-1. That's my prediction.
I want to rewind. I think that's accurate, potentially 2-1 Liverpool away at the Etihad. I want to rewind a little bit and go back to 2020 when Liverpool had wrapped up the Premier League. This is when we are in the depths of COVID. There's no fans, and City blew Liverpool out. Liverpool had already won, basically, the title, but City blew them out. I think they had to have like 4 or 5-0, and Liverpool just didn't care because they'd already won. Like, they had it wrapped up even before the replay happened, and we played those last 9 games. But that was kind of scary because even if Liverpool are trying 70%, 80% of the time, I don't think that there's a 5-goal difference. So that always sticks in the back of my mind. And I put up something on the Bolos, and it was very interesting. It says PL record, Premier League record since 2018. And if you look at the stats, it shows Pep and Klopp. They've both played 143 games. Pep has gotten 335 points. Klopp has gotten 334 points. Pep has scored 348 goals. Klopp has scored 317. Pep has conceded 108, and Klopp has conceded 117. And the transfer net spend for Pep is 189 million, and for Klopp it's 171 million. All those stats basically say that these guys are right there. They're neck and neck. Now, Pep comes out on top. He's won the Premier League more in that time. He's conceded less goals. He's scored more goals, and he's gotten more points by one more point, one tie more, whatever you want to say. I think it comes down to coaching, and I think it comes down to lineups, like you're saying, because Pep, and there's a quote out there, maybe we'll put it at the end of the thing, he is like totally hyper aware that he overthinks and that he can actually himself screw City. City should have beat Chelsea in the Champions League final. If they start Rodri, they win the Champions League final. But he basically started 6 number 10s and no holding midfield, and N'Golo Kante and Jorginho ate him alive over 90 minutes. They just couldn't. They didn't have the swing. By the time he brought Rodri in, it was too late. So I think Klopp is going to win because I think Pep is going to overthink this. He's in rotation amongst the Champions League games, and God forbid if Pep lost at home to Liverpool, gave Liverpool the edge in the title race, then 3 days later loses away at Atletico, which is not a fun place to play, 2-0. He could, in 6 days, kind of give the edge to Liverpool for the title and also be knocked out of the Champions League, something that Lord knows the Etihad group really wants him to win. Do I think those things are going to happen? No. I think he'll lose against Liverpool and he'll go through on Champions League. It will come down to either Liverpool or City losing to Crystal Palace, tying to Chelsea, doing something silly that will happen. But I do think I agree with you. Sorry, once again, a long way to say that I do believe that Liverpool will win 2-1. I think that that's very accurate.
But when it's just amazing to me when Foden came on the field, how that immediately changed that game to yesterday. He comes on the field for less than 5 minutes and they score a goal. Right? He gets the pass. He gives it to De Bruyne. De Bruyne finds a great shot and he scores. But my problem with City right now is Grealish. Right? What is this guy doing? Like, what is the point of Grealish? What is the point of this player? He goes out there. He just puts the ball. This is how I actually kind of felt about him at Villa too. He loves holding the ball and like putting like kind of like trying to do a move and get past the guy. And that's why he's the most fouled player, right? Or was the most fouled player when he was playing every game. But I think that's the only reason you put him in. Hopefully he gets close enough to the 18-yard box and he gets fouled, and then you can get De Bruyne to score on a free kick. Like, that's the only advantage I see him playing right now. And I think if he starts, which he probably will, because honestly they have to rotate because they have a game again on Wednesday. I don't see them having a presence in the midfield the way that Liverpool can boss the midfield with Henderson, right, and Robertson. And Trent Alexander-Arnold is the best wing back. I don't care if he's called a right back. He's the best wing back because in probably the league, because the guy can't defend for shit, but he's got a lethal cross, right? And he's got so many assists this season. So like, he's an attacking threat that's, going to create problems for on set pieces, especially for City, because they got Van Dijk in the box and they got Henderson in the box, and they've got Salah always as a threat, and I'm sure probably Mane will play, and I think Firmino will come off the bench if they need him, and Jota will probably start because Diaz started Jota and Firmino came in as subs in the Champions League game, so I think it'll actually be Mane, Salah, Jota as the front three. And the other thing is Liverpool's this. You know what you're going to get from Liverpool. You're going to get the same thing, the same formation pretty much every week. City, it's tough, and whether that plays to the City's advantage because Liverpool don't know what they're get, or Pep's going to overthink it and play some crazy formation lineup, right, and put out like fucking 12, put out 10 midfielders, and. Yeah. The other thing is, I could totally see Ederson making a crazy, stupid sweeper keeper mistake and in giving the victory to Liverpool. Another one of those things.
I want to disagree with you. I think Diaz starts. Diaz has never played against City, and Diaz, for me, obviously biased opinion, he's Colombian, but he's fucking amazing. He has a je ne sais quoi that neither the other front have there. They all have different things and they're all unique, but he's very unique on his own and he does something special. And I think he actually starts, and then I don't think he starts against Benfica when they're at Anfield, because they should not lose at Anfield. And I think he's going to throw him up there and say, wow, you've never seen this guy play. They played Jota 100 times. Not 100 times, hyperbolic, right? But between Wolves and with Liverpool. They've also played Salah a bunch of times. They played Mane. They played Firmino. But they've never played this guy Diaz. And I think he could turn some people inside out. And the other thing is, and this is potentially obvious, but this could be the preview of the Champions League final because of how Liverpool and City are on either side of the bracket. So City and Liverpool could essentially be fighting for the treble against one another, which is insane, in the Champions League, in the FA Cup, and in the Premier League.
Well, I won't say I don't know what Klopp's going to do. I don't know what Pep's going to do. I know the formation Klopp's going to put out there, and I know kind of what the attacking style you're going to get. But I honestly think if City their game plan is to have a ton of possession and just pass the ball around the 18-yard box, I mean, they don't have a number 9 to get it done. And we saw this yesterday. Like, they struggled to score. It wasn't like they crushed yesterday. It wasn't any of that. They struggled. They struggled against Atletico to score. I mean, they had possession.
2-1, yeah, I mean, I think 2-1 is reasonable, and I think that City, even if City have 60% possession, Klopp probably wants that. He's like, are you kidding? Look at who I have on the counterattack. I have Mane, Diaz, and Salah, or I have Jota in there. I'm fine. Have some possession. We're going to get the ball back, and we're going to knock a ball over the top or put a ball through, and we have some of the best forwards
every team that's done well against City has said, okay, you can have the ball.
Literally.
So
let's transition to fantasy. Nick Bailey's still at the top. Mitch is in second. Will Hayden's in third. Oz is still in fourth. Mac Bruce is in fifth. Arthur Riggs has hopped up with his team #Dookie. El Pibe de Oro, Diego is in seventh. Jeff, you've moved up to eighth. And your boy, I've moved all the way down to the 11th. Eric Cajon is still in last place. I don't even think he cares about fantasy. It breaks my heart.
He probably doesn't even listen to us anymore. Probably doesn't listen to our podcast.
I think he does, though. I just don't think he cares. Like, he just doesn't care about fantasy, which I can respect, because some days I'm like, meh. But that's that. Week 32 is on the horizon. The second round of Champions League is coming up. Now, we haven't talked about Europa League, but I think that's okay. Maybe we can do that next week after we have something to talk about once the games have been played. But that's it. This Sunday, like I said, I really feel that all the games on Sunday are just going to be great. Brentford, West Ham, good one. Leicester, Crystal Palace, they're right next to one another. Norwich, Burnley, they're right next to one another, relegation. And then you have the City, Liverpool for the title. Would you like to share anything else with the people, the people?
No, I mean, soccer. I mean, the only thing that we didn't discuss, and we can just,
Oh, no, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Okay, we were about to leave, but get a little bonus content right here. This is like the bonus content.
This is the Patreon
portion.
Content.
This is like, you stayed long enough, you're going to get this content. Good job.
This is actually the most important part of the podcast.
And so it came out today that FIFA president, I don't know the fuck his name, he's basically wants for the Qatar World Cup, right? Like very soon, should make a rule that each half will be 50 minutes instead of 45, giving a grand total of 100 minutes, a nice round 100 to World Cup games played this World Cup 2022. I am big opponent of this. I think it's really asinine. I think it's probably the dumbest change after the play the World Cup every 2 years proposal. But for me, it's just a money grab, just an ad revenue grab. How can they squeeze more dollars out of commercials and ads and that sort of thing? And they probably did some calculation. If we tack 5 minutes on each half, we can run this many more ads, or we can put people, we make this much more money. That's kind of my view of it. I don't see any other advantage to playing 100 minutes.
The FIFA's president's name is Gianni Infantino. So good old Gianni Infant, this motherfucker, you're going to have to make it explicit now. He didn't get his way with the having a World Cup every 2 years, which is so asinine that he was like, okay, how can we get people on the field in a World Cup tournament more? Oh, we'll just play 100 minutes. This to me shows zero respect for the welfare and the well-being of these players, and I do not see how the clubs let their players go, knowing that they're going to have to play, if they go to the final or whatever they play, they're going to have to play 11% more per game. And because this World Cup is going to be but in the middle of this club season, this is just bad. It's just bad. It's like you said. It's like, okay, so if we can get 11 or 10% more from our sponsors for the funding, because we're going to have the MasterCard logo up 10 to 11% longer, it's just a money grab. And it's absolutely ridiculous. You can change many things about the game. You want to introduce VAR, okay, it doesn't change the game. When you add on more time, it totally is going to change everything, because there are some games where we know, hey, you know what, I need like 4 or 5 more minutes, and I think my team can get over the line. This is going to lead to a lot of injuries, and I just think it's horrible. Like, I think this World Cup, you're going to have to put an asterisk next to it if this continues and be like, well, the winner of that actually had more time on the field or whatever. It doesn't give the weaker teams chances to beat the bigger teams, because the bigger teams now have longer. They just have longer to take shots, the law of averages. And it doesn't reward teams that are going to get there and don't have 9 guys deep on a bench or a guy in every single position. And I also think the bigger thing that I was thinking about earlier after we spoke about this is that this is how the qualifying should have been. You can't just introduce something into the main tournament that wasn't part of the qualifying. I do not think it's fair. And I think just from like a tournament standpoint, that's messed up. That's like you're playing basketball and there's 3s and 2s, and then you go to the March Madness tournament and all of a sudden there's a 4-pointer. Well, that wasn't in the qualifiers or the entire year. It changes the entire feel of the tournament. So I think we're both vehemently against this. And this is just another thing that makes me super turned off about this Qatar World Cup. Not only is it, yes, I think like 6,500 people have died or lost their lives in the construction of these stadiums. Now we're going to have 100-minute games already in air conditioning because the heat is going to be literally insufferable. And on top of that, apparently rainbow flags, you can't have a rainbow flag there because it's part of their like law, homophobia is built into the fabric of the society. So it's like every week I keep finding out more reasons to not be excited about the World Cup other than the draw, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you can't have something in qualifying and then change the rules for the tournament. I mean, the whole point is to play the same game. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I actually think that you should, like, VAR should be... there are a lot of games played in qualifying that didn't have VAR just because the countries, like, couldn't afford it, or, like, the stadiums couldn't afford it, or whatever, or the organization. I think that's bullshit. I think if you are a CONCACAF or CONMEBOL or any of these countries that are competing to be in the World Cup, you should have VAR, and then obviously VAR is used in the World Cup. So that's one thing, and that's one point. But I think that should apply to everything. I think if you're playing 90-minute games in qualifying, you play 90-minute games in the World Cup. If you want to change it after the World Cup, have that discussion, and then I still disagree. But that should be after the World Cup happens. And then there's a whole new round of, you have test games where they play 100 minutes, that you could have all these different you could have another tournament where they play 100 minutes. You could actually put empirical data behind the 100-minute thing and say, okay, well, maybe 100 minutes is an okay time, because then we have 5 subs, we can make more subs, and we have more, it gives more chance for other players to, maybe there's some benefits, right? So maybe, but it's not at the World Cup. You don't do the test for a new format of the game. Literally, 90 is a thing that's used for branding of football in the world. And you need to go test this out. You don't just say, oh yeah, now the games are 100 minutes. Cool. Like, that's not how policy works. Like, you have to test it. You have to run, like, maybe you do it at youth levels. Maybe you do it at university level. Maybe you do it at college level. Maybe you do it but this will have an impact down the line, right? Because then other leagues are going to say, well, why? Well, if they're playing it, the FIFA wants us to play it at 100 minutes. Why don't we change it to 100? It's Pandora's box. It's madness. The guys are already stretched thin. The guys already don't want to play a ton of games. This actually leads me down the path of players' unions and international football players' unions, where there's representatives from each country, like each football organization, on a board, and they all get to vote. And these changes don't happen in a vacuum. They happen amongst discussion. There's negotiations. There's actually science behind things. There's actually research. It's not just some guy sitting with a board of rich white guys who get to decide the fate of all these thousands of pro players who have, their lives to think about. They literally put their lives out there. They're some of these guys get CTEs. Some of these guys, get really hurt, the knee injuries and things that cripple them for the rest of their life. It's not we think of them as these rich guys who just get to party and do all those things, and they get to play football all day. But honestly, most of them are just grinding. Most of these guys are not the top pros. Most of them are making a couple $100,000 a year. If you start saying, oh well, you're gonna have to play all these games and 100 minutes, and they're only thinking, well, 10 more minutes for me to tear my ACL. Especially when they're tired. That's when injuries happen.
If you think of it that way as their office job, it's all right, you're going to get paid the same, but now you have to come in for 11% more. You have to.
Exactly.
Just because we just decided. And I'm wondering, I love the idea of the players union and every FA, every football association basically sending in, the captain, the coach, and then the president of the football association. They all get a vote on any changes. And majority, it has to be 75% to pass, because you're changing. This is huge. This is changing the constitution of the world's biggest game, because that's what it is. And at some point I'm when do we replace FIFA? Right? Because no one's ever really liked FIFA. No one likes Sepp Blatter, the guy before Infantino. That guy was a fucker too. So when do we just replace FIFA? If we can replace the Champions League with the Super League, when do we just come together, all of the nations, and say, we're good with FIFA, thanks. We actually don't need you anymore. We're going to take the rules that you guys had, but get away from you. We're not going to be putting this thing in Qatar, which makes no sense because you're going to have AC. And I think you sent me the picture, or we saw it in the group chat. But if you haven't seen it, go look at the Twitter photo that has gone viral of the final of the stadium where the final is going to be in Qatar. It is crazy. It literally looks dystopian. It looks something out of the year 2300 when there's no water left. It's insane. And anyway, we should probably wrap up the pod because we're going on an hour at this point. But I think we're both very much in agreement that you can't just all of a sudden just say, 100-minute games. Even if you just did that, you went down to the local men's league and you say, you guys will play 100 minutes instead of 90 to make a full game. That's just not how this works.
Yeah, it screams of just a bunch of guys sitting in a room who don't have any idea of how the games actually get played. They don't even understand that football is an actual game between 22 men on the field running around. It's literally them moving chess pieces around on a board. It's numbers on a paper. It's not real for them. It's just profits and losses, and it's a business for them. And they see more time equals more money. And so that's their shtick. And if you don't have any way to fight that, if you don't have any way to organize yourself and push back against that, beyond just people coming out and saying, well, that's dumb, you need actual organization and pushing back against that. Because it's completely asinine, it's completely ridiculous, and things need to change. It just needs to change. There's players union, there's unions in other leagues, there's unions in other sports. I think other sports should have unions too. Because there needs to be a cycling union. I think international cycling union. But there's in the NBA and MLB and American sports, there's unions because they don't want this shit to happen, and it doesn't. There's strikes and shit. It's crazy.
I'm interested to see what's going to happen with this World Cup, because it wouldn't surprise me if there are protests and players doing things when they score goals to piss off the Qataris. But we'll see. Week 32 is on the horizon. The Qatar World Cup, the Qatar World Cup is it's kind of like a dumpster fire coming towards us that some of us are excited about. I think we're excited about, but also just kind of what the hell are you guys doing? And Champions League. It's going to be good.
Well, that wraps it up. Join us next week. We'll be back.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thanks for listening to the Boys and Bolos podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, Twitch at Boys and Bolos.
If you'd like to be a guest, please reach out. You can hit us on any of the social media accounts that Jeff just mentioned, or email us directly at boysandbolos@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening, and see you next time.